Bienvenue à Lyon, and welcome to the channel as well. I'm Tim, and this is Egg Chasers. I'm just strolling down by the river in Lyon ahead of the New Zealand-Italy game later. Seen a lot of Kiwi shirts in Lyon today. But on this video, I want to talk about, well, on the face of it, it's kind of a negative story, but I'm hoping I can spin it into a positive. Why is it that this is the perfect country for the Rugby World Cup right now? And what can we all learn elsewhere in the world where we are, frankly, in some cases, total basket cases? That's you, England, I'm talking to. Because, I feel really grateful. Just a demonstration. There's an all black shirt right here, just walking past me. How you doing? How you doing? Good luck in the game tonight?
Thank you.
Oh, French all black fan. But there you go. So, yeah, back in England, I've been sat here by the river, you know, enjoying the World Cup in France and this incredible weather. It's just unreal. I'm in shorts still. Anyway, and I'm reading these stories about Jersey going bust, another professional English club going to the wall. There were 3 Premiership clubs last year, and now the season's only just started, and already the team that won the Championship, which is the second tier of English rugby last year, they've gone bust now. They've completely gone to the wall, which is really gutting. 144 years of history, just gone. So why is it that there's some countries that are doing incredibly well and some that are just an absolute mess? And just compare England, right? 4 professional clubs have gone bust. People are wondering where their money's going from. Players are having to retire because there's no jobs. Participation levels are dropping. There's constant fights and wrangling. Law changes and variations which get lots of people angry. The communication really bad. All that's going on. And yet here in France, we're in a city that has a top 14 team, which is part of a league pyramid where there are 4 professional leagues. All the players in the world want to come and play here. Audiences watching it on TV are massive, so leading to big bumper TV deals. Loads of spectators are coming to stadiums, making them the most fun places to go and watch games of rugby. The national team is brilliant. The under-20s have won the World Championship. What's going on? They're like 21 miles across the water from England. So what can we learn? Oh, that's a swan. I thought someone was running past. What can we learn? Well, there's a bunch of things going on here, isn't there? There's a bunch of things going on. Do you know what? I'm going to start with a little anecdote, right? This is something that I saw outside the Marseille stadium ahead of the England-Argentina game. There's a little shopping centre right by the stadium. And they had this big mural, and it was all these cartoon rugby players. I can't remember what they were advertising, but it was like these cartoon rugby players. And in massive letters underneath, it said, and I think my translation is right here, it said, men of rugby. I remember looking at that and thinking, at first I didn't really give it a second thought, and then I went, that would never happen in England. Wouldn't be allowed to. Wouldn't be allowed to. You can't say men of rugby. And it's just it's a little tiny example, but just of the fact that here in France they embrace rugby and everything that the sport stands for and everything that the sport is. They don't shy away from basically saying it's quite a tough sport. It's not for everyone. You have to be a certain type of character to actually play it. Now, I want as many girls and women to play rugby as well, but it is a tough sport. And in England, we seem to be apologising for what rugby is all the time. That's just one tiny little thing which just popped into my head then. Another thing would be that my son plays rugby. And the only reason he plays rugby is because I took him along to our local rugby club because he does not play rugby in school. Now, we live in Manchester, and in Manchester, in order to play rugby at school, you have to go to a fee-paying private school. And my son goes to a state school, so none of the kids that go to his school, and no one in our local area, unless they pay for their education, plays rugby. Unless, like me, they have a parent that takes them along to their local rugby club. So we got that as a bit of a backdrop. And in France, by comparison, on Wednesday afternoons, and I've seen this happen, kids get let off school early, and then they have a couple of hours of like enrichment time. They can kind of do what they want. And in some cases, rugby clubs will send a minibus to the school and say to the kids, hey, come and play rugby. come and give it a go. They take him there to the club, give him a great couple of hours, bring him back. Tiny little thing. But then you look at much bigger picture stuff, much bigger picture stuff. And it was something that one of the Australian coaches said yesterday, talking about reflecting on the Australia-Wales defeat. And he said, Super Rugby's not preparing our Wallabies for the World Cup. And I thought about that and thought, well, hold on. Well, New Zealand are in that same competition. They seem to be doing all right. And then I went, oh, but you know what? Those New Zealand sides, they play against each other. And one phrase I love, steel sharpens steel. Those New Zealanders play against each other for really good teams, around really good players, against really good players. And most of them are making the knockout level stage of the competition, which means they are facing those games where there's real jeopardy, where small things in a game really matter massively. And Australian players just aren't facing that regularly enough. And there was a great example in that Wales-Australia game where I think you saw the consequence of that. I don't know why they did it, and it was so foolish, but 10-6 down, and they had a penalty in a kickable position, and they didn't take the 3 points to go 10-9 down. They kicked for the corner, messed up the penalty. Jack Morgan does that 50-22. Wales go and score. Kind of game done at that point. They go from being 1 point down to 10 points down. And I think moments like that are a consequence of what that Aussie coach was talking about. They don't have that meaningful competition. And when I relate that back to English rugby, I think it's the same. Now, I've been working on the Premiership since 2015. I love the competition, and some of the rivalries in that competition are amazing. The fact that when Bath play Leicester or Gloucester play Bath, or whatever combination of games it may be, you've got sometimes 100, 150 years of history in that fixture. That's really special. But the standard of players in the league has dropped significantly down the years because, well, basically people are coming here to play rugby in France and going to Japan and the like. But also there's been no relegation for a while. So again, those English teams have changed the way they play. There's more emphasis on attacking rugby and taking a chance and putting youngsters in. And on the face of it, that all sounds great, doesn't it? But does it help you when your national team comes to a World Cup? I'm not so sure. The French team, under 20 world champions, national team doing brilliantly, based on a domestic league which is razor sharp, red hot, tough, a grind. Like the gap between the top 14 now and the Premiership is vast. And then let me flip it over to talk about Ireland, Wales, South Africa, Scotland for a second, the teams that are in the URC. Just on Wales for a second. Now their domestic, their union is in a total mess. Just ask the teams in Wales that haven't had their funding organised, players who've had to leave because they haven't got a job or whatever. It's a total mess. However, the fact they play in the URC and they're playing against Irish provinces and South African teams that are really good, I think means that guys like Jack Morgan have been able to come straight into the national team and perform on day one. Now, good young players will always find their level and always be good enough eventually, but I think it is noticeable some of those young Welsh players have just come straight in and done it. And I think the fact that they're playing against these South African, these Irish teams helps. I think it's helped Ireland. Now, they've got lots of things going right. The school system in Ireland is absolutely fantastic. They've spent a lot of money on coaching and developing, nurturing these players, and it's a long-term vision that Ireland have got. Their provinces have been absolutely brilliant, and Leinster's been the back rock of this national team. However, I also think the fact that these players are getting regular exposure to these South African teams in the URC has also just helped them take it up another notch. And they're good enough that they play in the knockout stages of the Champions Cup, the Heineken Cup, which are serious teams when you're coming up against French top 14 opposition. Serious rugby teams. So that's also played a part. Whereas the English teams, because they've been losing players to France, The teams aren't quite at the level to get to the knockout stages of the Champions Cup, which means they don't get exposure to those big games, which means they're not ready to make the transition to international rugby in a lot of cases, or they're not used to playing at that intensity, so it feels like a bit more of a shock for them. What do you do? What do you do? Well, firstly, I think you just got to have a long-term vision. One of the things which the owners of Jersey said when they gave their statement about going bust yesterday is that they've only got a 1-year guaranteed level of funding and there is no bigger picture in place. And you can't expect anyone. And what's basically happened is the financial backers have said, well, we can't make plans based on that, so give us something a bit more concrete, will you? And I think that's absolutely vital. And here in France, what they've got is a league system that means if you're in the top 14, it doesn't matter if you get relegated. Obviously it matters, but if you get relegated, you're still going to be in a really good competition where there's good TV money, where you can keep hold of most of your players and aspire to come straight back up again, and the fans will still be there at the home and away grounds. So it's just of a really good standard overall. That's only going to happen if there's kind of long-term vision, if there's a commitment to develop coaching, if there's a commitment to kind of put the infrastructure in place, build it and they will come kind of a thing. And stop apologising for what rugby is. Rugby's tough, rugby's hard. That's why we love it. Anyway, just a few thoughts. And I hope you'll appreciate that. I don't want this to come off as negative. I want to be proactive and constructive, but I am also gutted that back in England, there's another 30 odd rugby players who are now out of a job. And that's only gonna, that's 30 mortgages, that's 30 bunches of kids and wives that are now stressing, and all the staff that are associated with the club, and the supporters of that team. And the fact that's going to mean there's more players and less money, so the wages of everyone's going to dip again. It's just an absolute mess. It just means ultimately way more English players are going to come and play here. So yeah, I'm really excited about the game later. I'm a little bit gutted about all that. And I just want as many people as possible to play, enjoy, watch, support and spend on rugby. And hopefully you get that passion, if nothing else. And if that's enough to convince you to hit subscribe on this video, then I would really, really appreciate your support with me right here. And I will see you on the next one when I will be up the hill at the stadium in Lyon for New Zealand versus Italy.